Topic I was given was breaking the glass ceiling, so I softened that a little bit. I'm not sure we all know how to do that, but we've heard some examples of how to do it so far. So what I'd like to cover are some of the career patterns because there are lots. I've been doing this survey for 16 years. It's a big survey, a reasonably big survey. We're only going to touch on a little bit of it. So if you want to see all the results, if you are a Council of Supply Chain Management Professionals member, you can see the last 2 years going on the website and logging in. If you're not a member, you can see a couple of years before that. So it's on the main cscmp.org website, careers in the middle, down to career patterns, and scroll down until you find out what you want. So we're just going to cover a few highlights today. We'll also look at some of the benefits and barriers as perceived by the people who respond to our survey and try to address this breaking the glass ceiling kind of idea topic that I was given. So a few stories first, mine. And a couple of numbers that I want you to remember, like that 10% and that 1% for a little bit further on in the presentation. So I went to Purdue, one of the first computer science majors ever. Went to school with the engineers, et cetera, 10% women. Then I went on to get a master's, as Deborah just mentioned, and I was the only woman. Out of 115 to 120, I was the second woman in the program. The one that the year before did really, really well. And they started out saying, we have great expectations of you, and being what we just talked about, women, I just kind of sunk down. I made it through. Okay, so remember the 10% and the 1% for a little bit later on. A couple of little experiences. We've seen what started to happen in the 1970s. Recall, I graduated in 1968. So I was interviewing at the master's level, went over to the student union, and this person said, let's go for coffee. I'm thinking, this is weird. So as a student union, okay, we'll do that. Goes over, and he's kind of, well, I called my boss today and said, I'm interviewing a woman. What should I tell her? He said, tell her we only hire career people. Fast forward, I didn't go to work for them. I went to work for Procter & Gamble and a few other people that actually said they wanted to hire women. So fast forward to 1980 when I'm finishing up my dissertation at Ohio State, going on the market, and now they wanted women. So I got offers probably partially because I was a woman, and the one I took was staying at Ohio State, unusual to happen at that time, and they also gave some money for hiring a female, which actually kind of irritated me a little bit. I wanted to be hired on my qualifications. So a couple stories about things that might have happened and may resonate with some of you out there. I was the only female in the marketing and logistics department for about 10 years. First one to make associate, first one to make full. Had some job offers for chairs other places, chose not to move because of the economics, et cetera. Then I want to move down to Ann Drake, who won for the first time in the history of NCPD, MCLM, CSCMP. They've changed their names 3 times. First time to win the Distinguished Service Award. We tried to get her through last year. It usually takes a couple of years. She's in there now. What did she do? She actually started off with a teaching degree, I believe. But her father had started a logistics warehousing company in Chicago. She, only daughter, ended up taking that over, and she built it into one of the largest privately held 3PLs in the country. We have Excel back here, which is publicly held now, also started in Ohio, but she's built it, and she's done really well. And then I just got an email a couple of weeks ago that said we're all supposed to show up in Chicago on February 27th because she has decided in her email, she said when she used to go to CSCMP, it was pretty much all male, and now it's almost all male. So she's starting a group called AWESOME, Advancing Women's Excellence in Supply Chain Operations Management and Education. So She said, I've watched this over the years, and I want to do something that helps people move ahead. So I know you have groups here doing it. She's starting a new one. We need to kind of work together, not reinvent the wheel, in my opinion, but she's working at this, and she's doing it herself. So some of the information I'm going to share with you, a few caveats. I've been surveying mainly the members of CSCMP, or whatever its previous name might have been. These people tend to be, by the time the corporation is willing to pay for their membership, or I have to pay for my own, they tend to be managers, directors, vice presidents, and a few CEOs like Ann. Yesterday, as we went around and introduced ourselves, we have a number of managers and directors sitting here in the room, so you may relate to that. We do also, when I started doing this 16 years ago, I wanted to interview everybody, so there will be some analysts in here. I don't show you the breakdown that you can go find later on, but mainly who are answering these are at that manager and above level. Yes, can you hear?
No, I can hear, but I just, in the Ontario context, we actually have a CSCMP, which is Certified Supply Chain Management Professional. What is your CSCMP?
It's the group. So it started by lost a vote of one, having the word logistics in it. It started in the 1960s. They just had their 50th anniversary. Actually, it's this year, but they had it last year. So it's the Council of Supply Chain Management Professionals. So it's an organization. They do now have SC Pro. They've started a certification themselves in the last year or so. Thanks for asking. Okay, so when you look at this data, understand I surveyed everybody if they chose to respond that's female, but the preponderance of membership of this organization is manager and above. So the sample varies from year to year. I send it out to whoever the membership is. Some people have faithfully filled it out every year, but there's some coming and going, and you'll see some of that in my results that they don't track exactly over the years. So understand that when we do longitudinal surveys and studies, you'd like to have the same people in the panel year after year after year. No, this is whoever chose to answer. And unfortunately, most of them are from the U.S. or living in the U.S. Next highest answering is from Canada, but it's mostly U.S. people, so understand that as we're going through this as well. Some general observations. When we started doing this, they hadn't computerized everything. We went and tried to figure out how many people belonged in 1980, guessing whether Chris was male or female, going through this. But in general, CSCMP, from the time I've been tracking, I think might have been a low of 8% back then, 10 to 12%. They sent me a list of 1,000 plus names of female members. There are 9,000 plus members of CSCMP right now, 10 to 12. It's pretty much held. Similar concerns have existed year after year after year. I'll show you that. Similar characteristics for success have been year after year after year for that as well. I started this in 1997. So a couple of things, and this is the first year. The reason I started doing this is Bud Lalonde at Ohio State started surveying people in 1971, and so then they asked us to do the women's part, and that's what I've been focusing on, but is no longer doing that, so this year is the first year that I asked men and women together. So you want to read the headings and see what it says there at various times. So in this case, the men are in blue here, and the women are in the purple or whatever color. So if we look at the age, we'll see that the women tend to be younger. And the men, if the far right category, 48% of them are over 50 years. So then I went back and looked down here. But if you look at the bottom, 1997, when I first started, only 5% were in that last category, to 15%, to now 26%. So we have been aging. We have been going up, but still there are a lot of folks at the early end, and so there is a little bit of difference there. So mainly if I show the male and female separately, there's a difference. If I don't show, there might be a few differences I'll mention, but not that much. So generally, they're the ones at the senior management position, which we'll see in the next one over here on the left. So even though I varied from 30 to 32 to 35% over here, people responding that they have direct responsibility, that manager, director, et cetera, we've tended to be over on the advisory side this whole time. Some variation, last year being a little more variation than any other. This one doesn't have anything on it because we generally see the same numbers. This happens to be male and female together, but the same topics have been going on for years and years and years when I only asked the women. So what does it take to contribute to success? Hard work, determination, but it's not just that. We've got to be able to see the big picture, and I think our two speakers in the last session did a really good job, that you've got to be leaders and look ahead and see the big picture. And yesterday we had two people say you got to know the business, you have to know it all to move ahead. We need leadership skills, we need management skills, we need analytic skills to even get the job in the first place, or the ability, and we also need those communication and interpersonal skills in order to make it ahead, and I think that has been emphasized enough so far. Then we said, what do you like best about being in this job? And again, I put the male and female in here, but it's been pretty much this list, maybe a little bit different order the whole time. So it's challenging. We're not going to sit in our little cubicles and do analysis all day. Some of us do, but a lot of us have to be out on the floor, managing the warehouse, doing other kinds of things. So it's challenging, it's fast-paced, and we do a lot of different things, so we're not bored with doing the same thing. The video that Kevin showed, she was doing something different every day. We like to make a difference, and it's something that you can see, that you got those things on the truck in time, you got stuff moved out of the warehouse in time, you hit those customer service levels in times. We like to make a difference. This one is different. Okay, when we started in 1997, we didn't have all these categories that I just showed you in the last two. We asked open-ended questions, and we said, what do you like best? What do you like least? Number one, top management doesn't understand logistics, supply chain management, whatever our area is that you want to talk about. 1997, what was number two? Male-dominated environment. We've heard that. 10% to 12% members of CSCMP. Look around, now you're in a different number of your up-and-coming generations, not back here with the white hair. Things are changing, but that's what it was in 1997. 2005, still number two. One, they don't understand. Two, we're operating in a male-dominated environment. 2011, that one moved down to number 4. Now, to prepare you for the next slide, I this year went to men and women. We had about 665 people who had usable questionnaires answering this survey. Less than 200 of them were women, and I chose, for the first time ever doing it, not to put that in a category, just to see what would happen. Where do you see it? It's not there. 14% are other, and that's about the same amount of women that said other, but it's not that huge category. They didn't put it down when it wasn't given them to check off. In 1997, open-ended question, that's a big deal. All the other years, we have that choice, check it off, check it off, check it off. This year, so I leave that for you to think about and what it might mean. So, with those as a few of the things, I'm not going through all the stuff about salaries and all kinds of other things that you can go on the website and look. The title they gave me was, How Do We Break This Glass Ceiling Thing? So I'm using some things that you've heard already today and also from my guest speakers. Since I've done this for 16 years, I pick a special topic each year to make it a little bit different and more interesting for the people who answer the survey, to keep them answering it. So this time I had, and then I bring in somebody special. I brought in Ann Drake a few times. This time it was Holly Stanton. I'll introduce her in a moment. So these are a lot of her things that she spoke about, and we've had people come up here and say what was important to them. Have a plan, and it might change. Make sure you got those time management skills, general management skills, so you can get things done. And here might differ a little bit from the 2 sessions ago. She said avoid the myth of trying to do it all. So I'm going to take Sue's version of don't do it all at once, maybe, as a possibility. You'll have to decide how you feel about that. Seek those mentors and supporters from different areas. We've heard that one. Believe in yourself and have fun. Ruth did a great job of the fun and smiling and all that kind of thing earlier today. And smile, or at least smile with your eyes, or be happy and look positive. It helps in that first 5 seconds. That was my first research project as a doctoral student, is what happens when you meet somebody? And it was hiring salespeople. They make a decision about you in the first 5 seconds. Look them in the eye, shake them with a firm handshake, give them the kind of look that you want them to remember. So smiling, not necessarily the thing I do automatically, but if you're trying, as I look at the people that get ahead and we're talking up here, a lot of them tend to have a positive countenance. Promote yourself, your field, and your group. We've heard that. Promote yourself. Be visible. 360-degree leader, I'll talk about a little bit later. Ask, we just heard that. Ask. Ask for that raise, whatever it is. And the last one is one of my own. Be wise. Do your research before you go in and talk to people about what it is you want. So, a few more stories. I'm going to call it a tale of 2 Hollies. The first one is Holly Stanton, and she is now Vice President of Marketing for Forecast Pro. It's a forecasting software. I've used it. I like it a lot. At any rate, she's Vice President of Marketing, so that's where a number of these came from, my real person for last October. This I asked of both men and women this year. How hard do you find it to balance career and family? What's the difference between the men and the women? Is it huge? I had one person during the question, they can't possibly be as busy as we are. So I'm watching the guys here to see what their reaction is, but the guys are finding it stressful too. They're finding it tough to manage. So if you add moderate, somewhat difficult, and very difficult, yep, the women have been pretty strongly on that side. So are the guys. What does that mean? Different environment today, possibly. We can talk about that later. I'm just leaving it there. So Holly said, okay, when she looked at the data, 4 out of 5 people said they found it moderate to very difficult to manage career and family, that life balance that we were just talking about. And achieving a good balance, as we've heard this morning, is good for all of us. It's important. So you're valuable at home and valuable at work, and you feel fulfilled at some level. So she said it helps to have a plan, and we've just been through that with the last group. You need a plan. Identify your own career path. Think about things like, do you intend to have children? Is it going to make a difference? What do you want to do? Do you want to step completely out? Do you want to go partway out? And again, what was said this morning is you've got to make it your plan, what works for you. Get the credentials and experience you need. We just heard, are you going to move ahead? Where are those circles and triangles and check? They've got everything to be a CEO that we just heard. What do you need to do? And you're going to have to do it on your own, probably. Your company may pay for you to go back to school. They may not. So these folks sitting around with their stuff around the back, you may need to put up some of the money yourself. Depends on your company. The stuff down at the bottom, she's from a little younger than my generation, so these are songs that just kind of resonated with her. I'm not going to spend time on those. So you have a plan, but you need to be flexible because you don't know what might come up. Our speaker last night, doing really well in Houston, go to Connecticut and set up this thing. What are you going to do? Are you flexible enough to make that change and create a flexible environment so you can make that change? Can your family move? Can your significant other move? Ideas like that. Time management skills and general management skills so that, as we heard this morning, you can leave early and still get all your work done if you're efficient at it. You can work part-time at home, or you can work the flex hours. What works well for you and your family environment as you define your family environment. And here's the one that may differ a little bit from what we heard earlier this morning. Being able to do it all at the same time may be a myth, and you have to decide that for your own environment, your own relationships. So what she said is you got to prioritize what's important at home and at work and focus on those kinds of things. Learn to delegate where you can. That's partly manager, but it can also be, we heard this morning, the little 5-year-old's job is go to school, right? That's his job right now. What are we all supposed to be doing? Make sure you take care of yourself. Some of us aren't really good at that. We're good at taking care of other people, and we forget that we need to be fed as well. So she's suggesting that we need to do that. So the other daughter, or the other Holly, happens to be my daughter, and she's chosen a little bit different career path. She got into the Air Force Academy right after women were allowed to fly fighter jets. She has her dad's eyes, not mine. 10% female. Where did we hear that number before? 30 years earlier. She went off to be an F-15E Strike Eagle pilot. They could fit all the women at Seymour Johnson on one wing. Then she had an issue where she couldn't fly anymore. She went off to be a maintenance officer. Our area, she finally became a loggie. In charge of 250 people, 5 women. Deployed to Afghanistan with 150 of those people, a couple of them women. No women in her chain of command. Survived, did well. One of the guys I was teaching at the Air Force Institute of Technology, and one of her people came in and said, "Wow, she is awesome." You have to say that as a parent. You will love to say that about your kid. But she would stand up when she needed to stand up, and she understood because I told her, you take care of the maintenance people, you want that plane to go off the ground and come back down again, and when you're a maintenance person, you take care of your people. You write good recommendations for them, which we were just hearing about. Make sure you help your people succeed. And no women interchange of command, like it just said. She achieved the rank of major. They banked all her money. And she got out 5 years ago, and now she has a 3-year-old and a 4-month-old, and they rule her world. So 250 to 2. And it's still different. I contend that is the hardest job there is in the world, and it's 24/7, and it never goes away. And she loves it, and she's doing some other things. So I'm putting that out to say, there are some other alternatives. I said that 2 years ago, and my real guest person, who I will not use the name of, started talking about Earth mothers. Why would you decide to stay home with your kids when you could have a career like we do? It's a personal choice. You need to do what you feel is right, because she was a latchkey kid from 8 on. And she said, I'm not going to do that to my kids. You make your choices. So back to Holly S. Stanton, Forecast Pro. She said, people make all the difference. You've got to surround yourself with the right people. So a balance, a lot easier with a partner who understands. So what did we hear yesterday from the SCMP person? That the guys will do stuff if you remind them. or if they are also in the mood to help share the responsibilities in the house, et cetera. When my daughter finally quit, her husband's a fighter pilot as well, and he said, "Oh, now I have a wife." So, develop a support network of colleagues inside and outside your organization. I'm going to show some mentor stuff here in a little bit, but getting ahead, you want mentors in different parts of your life. Financial mentors may not be the best relationship mentors. Relationship mentors may not be the best career mentors. Career mentors inside your organization, you may want sometimes somebody outside your organization to give you advice and perspective depending on what you want to share. So think about some different ones and choose to work for organizations. We've heard from some people up here that do have organizations that understand that balance and do help people balance the different parts of their lives. So mentoring, male and female was 70-30. The female was actually surprisingly 74-26 this year, but 70% have had what they would call a mentor in their life. A bunch of people, male and female, don't feel they have. Ask. Go find somebody in all these different areas. We talked about the 4 that Kevin had over here, or the 3 that I just mentioned, whatever it is. Go ask for mentors. Find out who's where you want to be. Ask them how they got there. Not like one of my students said in an interview, he said, came back and he said, "I don't think I got the job." And I said, "Why?" He said, when the guy said, "What do you want to do?" He said, "I want your job." Relationship skills. So what kind of help do you get from mentors? This didn't matter, male, female, 1997, 2012, whatever. We want some guidance, and we want some solid advice on what to do. We want some constructive criticism about telling us, don't do this, consider taking that. You might stand up against your dad, like the speaker last night, and go ahead and make that presentation because she got visible, which we'll talk about in a minute. She got visible with that CEO. And also, how do you negotiate the politics or whatever it happens to be, and maybe some help getting a job. Believe in yourself. Some of us have a challenge with that. Believe in what you can do, and I think we got some really good skill advice here in this last session as well as others, where it says find out what you do well. I require every one of my students to turn in a resume to me, and the top of it has to be, what are your skills? Not what you did, what are your skills? One of my friends says, my thumb hurts. How do you help that manager's thumb not to hurt? What is it you can do for them? So I put on my marketing hat. You are in sales, no matter where you are. You're selling to your subordinates, your kids, your significant other, your supervisor, whatever else it is. Know what it is you can do. Present that in a way that people say, oh, yeah, that's what I'm looking for. And you need it in the top third, and I'm expanding a little bit, but you just teach advertising. Where do people look? Right here. Right here where the eyes are. You want the most important thing that they see in the top third of that resume and standing out really well. Life isn't short. Have some fun. I'm not sure I've done that as well as some other people, but okay. So then we're academics here, so we started using some scales. So you see a whole lot of stuff here, and you may well not be able to read everything that's down the right, but this year we were looking at how people make decisions and their decision environment. So the first one is more the individual side. So is the individual valued? Is the individual rewarded? And we see that mostly the answers are agree, strongly agree over here on the right side, that, yep, individuals who stand out generally get recognized, employees make value, independence in their job. The one I want you to look at is the third one over, which is yellow, tan, whatever color you want to call it. But look at that one and look over at the no opinion, disagree side. It is the highest one over there. And what is it? People with good ideas make sure that top management knows about them. So from one standpoint, as we've been hearing this morning, now we don't want to really blow our own horn. We hope they'll figure it out. This is men and women. Not much difference between the men and the women. It may have been stated a way of saying, well, I'm just pushy, but it was carefully worded not to say pushy. People with good ideas make sure management knows the idea was theirs. So it could be within a team environment, whatever. They disagreed with this one, so I want you to remember this one as well for a little bit later on. Employees' ability to think for themselves is valued. Another one that was a little more disagreed with. Competition between employees is accepted. Men felt that way a little bit more than women. Each worker is encouraged to realize their own potential. So, another one of the things, be willing to promote your field, Kevin did a great job of that this morning. What do you do for your community? What are you doing for your profession along the way? So what I took was that tan stripe that we just saw, that we don't generally, male and female, don't generally promote ourselves a whole lot, along with what was number one from 1997 through 2012 that people didn't like about their business. Top management doesn't get it. Well, at this point, I think it's getting to be our fault. And what we need to do, in my opinion, so what we're teaching in our supply chain management book and what I teach my logistics people is you got to speak their language. And the language of top management at the C level tends to be finance. From the time Bud Lalonde started doing his survey in 1971, I didn't do it this year, but every year we have done it for men and women, for women only. If you could go back to school for 6 weeks, what topic would you study? Finance was always in the top 3. Always. My students put it off to the last minute, don't want to do it. You've got to understand it to be able to promote your organization. What are we doing? So we teach the economic value added model. I also teach the strategic profit model where you can track better customer service leads to better customer loyalty, leads to more orders, leads to a better bottom line. You have got to be able to track that. And if you don't have it, send me an email. I can send you where you can get the book, or you can study the strategic profit model. Look at how you do the bottom line. It's not just we loaded so many trucks, or we hit our delivery time. Those are the metrics. What did you do for the bottom line? We have to do that to break down that. Top management doesn't get it, in my opinion. Be willing to promote yourself, and we often don't want to do that. Join the professional organizations. I've been vice president of Society of Logistics Engineer. I was the finance person for 1 year at what's now CSCMP. I've been a roundtable chair. Some of us just fall into those roles, or you didn't say no along the way. But do things, volunteer. We just go to the YMCA, help them out. Couple of books I'm going to recommend, and you can choose to read them or not. One of them is The 360-Degree Leader by John Maxwell. He's one of the top 50 people on Amazon.com. Some people regard him as one of the top leadership people. And he talks about the 360-degree leader. What it means is, those of you who are supervisors or you have people under you, yeah, you're supposed to take care of the people under you and manage them. When you're in a team environment, and most of us are in team environments, we need to lead there. Even if we're not the team leader, we can make a difference. We can do our job. We can make suggestions. We can make this work. The one that a lot of us tend to forget, and I'm one of them, lead up. And what Maxwell says is, what can you do to lighten your leader's load? So you don't just go in, and my term is suck up, whatever you want to use. My previous boss, I never saw him. We weren't that far away. I figure I'll do my job. He walked in my office one time and sat down and said, "You don't appreciate what I do for you." Whoa. Fortunately, I was tenured. I hadn't thought about that part. I mean, yeah, I'll go help and stuff like this, but you need to be checking in with those bosses. You need to be letting them know what's happening. You need to ask them if there's anything you can do to help. Make sure you do your own job first. So then, when they're getting ready to move somebody into another position, who are they going to think of? You. A thought. The second one that's not on these slides is called the 5 love languages. And it works with spouses, significant others, with kids, and it works with people. There are different ways of grouping how people find value. And I'll try to get through all 5. I usually forget one. One of them is gifts. Doesn't have to be big gifts, just a little card, something along the way. And I will now. One of them is quality time. Don't read the newspaper, don't click. Sit down, look somebody in the eye, especially kids. We spell love, T-I-M-E. Another one is touch. Some people like hugs and things like that. Another one is words of affirmation. That was my boss. You don't tell me you appreciate me. So ever after that, if I got a teeny little raise, thank you. If I got a big raise, thank you. And he'll always say, you're welcome. Just a thought. So help those at all levels. Help your boss. They are there with a lot of manager responsibility. They could probably use some help. And help others see you as valuable so that when they're looking for somebody to move into a management or a higher management position, they might think about you. Be willing to ask. We've already heard that one. For a better position, for a raise, go in with data, I'm going to say in a minute. Sheryl Sandberg, who's now number 2 at Facebook, when she got the offer from Mark Zuckerberg, she was ready to take it. Her family, her friends said, no, ask for more. She did, and she did. So if we don't ask, we don't get. Then think and act like the position above, wherever it is you want to aspire. Think, act, dress, learn for what it's going to get you there. So management style, this is both men and women, tend to be participative. We want to hear what you have to say, but when we have to make a decision, we will make the decision and move on. Here was the other side. We had value the individual, where almost everybody agreed and strongly disagreed. Here's the one where it's working in teams, etc. It's a little more divided across the way. I think I'm getting close on my time, right? I'm okay? Okay. So we had, do they take care of you? So we've heard some of our people up here say, yes, they valued us. They wanted to take care of us, wanted to move up. Sometimes you're not in that kind of environment. So there was a little more disagreement with the fact that once you're in, you're treated like family, and they reward loyal employers. You're lucky in this area down where I come from. There's a lot of downsizing, right-sizing. Loyalty may not be the highest priority in some organizations anymore. Rational, both male and female. So the people that are at these management and above levels, male or female, are feeling that they make rational decisions with data to back it up. You've got to do some of that. But the other one was, what about that intuitive side? We heard last night, follow your intuition, listen to that little voice, and I'm like her. I have not listened to that little voice and went, oh, that's what you meant, along the way. But here we have some agreement. The one where we saw a difference with the women, and I didn't put it here, a higher proportion of women strongly agreed with the first 2, is that we make decisions including our instincts and our intuition. But other than that, it's kind of moving along in the same area. So we need to consider others' opinions, we need to look at that, and we want to feel good about the decisions we make, but we've still got to back it up, usually with some data along the way. Last one is mine. Be smart in what you're trying to do, and make sure you have the data to back it up. So if you want to change something, she or he who is asking the questions is in control. I heard that a number of years ago. When you're in an interview, don't just sit there like a bump on a log and wait for them to ask questions. Let them ask their questions, but you make sure you have questions at the end to find out what the job really entails, where's the company going, make sure you've shown that you have done your homework about the company, et cetera. So you have to do the homework in the background because, as John Archer, who was Director of Logistics for Ashland Chemicals several years ago, told my class, if I have data and you don't, I win. So follow your instincts, but have your data, do your research, feel what you feel is important. So the next set of slides, I'm going to show you what we learned, what my students and I learned in October, some of it I knew before, in October of 2011. There are lots of other websites. You make sure you're doing your research and coming to your own conclusions. So I was teaching a transportation course, and we're hearing a lot about carbon footprint, carbon dioxide, all this kind of green, sustainability, all this sort of thing. So I said, okay, let's find out about that because transportation is the one that uses up most of that stuff. So we could ask some questions. If we're trying to find out or change people's minds, we might say, why do we do X? Or what's the managerial relevance of doing Y? So you're not being confrontive, but you're asking questions and see what they say, and you might know where to go from then. So my two questions right now that I was asking the class is, what's the percent of atmosphere that's carbon dioxide? Happens to differ by weight and volume, and what percent of the greenhouse effect is man-made? And I sent them off and said, you got time? Well, I'm going to CSMP. You go see what you can find. Here are some of the things they found in a minute. So this is part of my class lecture. I kind of combined a couple of slides where the textbook is saying this is important. We need a sound, efficient transportation system. We need to have a clean, safe environment. I think we can all agree with that. What's green supply chain? Yep. We don't need to be fouling our own environment unduly. Business leaders increasingly believe that it's important for them to take a role, and that environmental quality doesn't have to be a zero-sum game. Some people have figured out how to make money off that. So I found these slides. This is US, 1990 to 2009, 20 years coming down. Carbon monoxide, not dioxide. Everything except ammonia is kind of coming down. Well, that's good. Yep, transportation is the one that's using up most of the fossil fuel, et cetera, either business or otherwise. This is the one that I knew from grade school that there were kind of two things that were most of the atmosphere. Where's carbon dioxide? If you had 78.8 and 20.95, this is dry, you end up with 99%. Argon gets us to 99.93, 0.039% and 0.067%. So that's the chart that some people like to look at. What about graphically? It's that teeny little yellow sliver that it's over there. So nitrogen is the blue. Oxygen is the red, argon is the bigger green sliver, others is the next color, purple and whatever you can possibly see there. Now this was a Canadian site that one of my students found, and when I went back to give it to other people, it wasn't there anymore. Another student found, a couple other students found this one. What about man-made? Now we got water vapor in there where we didn't have it before. 95%. Which part is natural? Which part is man-made? And finally, we got methane showing up in here, carbon dioxide and methane together. Bottom right, 0.28%, a quarter of a percent. This group estimates. Again, there are different research. I've done research for many years. I know there's no perfect piece of research. What are your assumptions? What are you putting in? What are you leaving out? But I just let you see this that they found. And if we do it graphically, there's water vapor, and then there's that carbon dioxide. But what happened in my government is they took down this chart, and what they show us is the upper right one that's going, wow, really steep from 320 to 390. Well, if you read up in the right-hand corner, that's parts per million. You need to have a decimal point and 3 zeros in front of that. You can take data and do whatever you want. So this one on the left is from the Smithsonian Institute, US. Also the one on the bottom right, which was what I learned when I was in grade school, is leaves take chlorophyll, use chlorophyll, and they take carbon dioxide and make what out of it? And then there's this one, which 15,000 years ago, we would have to have been about a mile up standing on the ice. And my farm is down in Ohio, right where the glacier dumped everything. So we had really, really rich land there. So yeah, has there been change in global temperatures? I think so. We wouldn't be here without it. So you ask questions, let people come up with their own solutions. So what percent is of carbon dioxide of the atmosphere by weight and by volume differs? How do you feel about that? What percent is man-made? How do you feel about that? What's the managerial relevance? And why did I pick this topic? Be wise. Do your own homework. Don't take what I said, what my students have. I got lots more websites if you want to look at them. I can send them to you. Send me an email. Do your own research. See where you are. Over the last several years, Canada is US's #1 supplier of fossil fuels. And where's it coming from? Thank you, Alberta. So as you head out, and Deborah's going to take over next and start talking about how to actually make your own career plan, you're going to have different choices. We've seen that laid out different ways today. When I was younger, I had to read a poem by Robert Frost called The Road Not Taken. So we went into this yellow wood, and here's 2 different paths. Both of them are kind of worn. Which one am I going to take? And the key is what's underlined here. I took the road less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. So how many supply chain people are there versus other kind of businesses? How many women are there in supply chain versus guys? Last set of questions. What's the largest company in the world, if you don't count oil prices? Walmart, Excel people right there, yep, they know it. Right now it has a different CEO, but from the middle 2000s, and CEOs tend to last about 18 months to 2 years in most corporations. He lasts longer. CEO in the middle 2000s name was Lee Scott. Anybody know how he got his start? He worked for Yellow Freight Transportation Trucking Company in Kansas City. You can be the head of the world's largest corporation from where you're starting right now. Don't ever sell yourselves short. Oops. Segue into what Deborah's going to do. So suggestions, share with other people what the best advice is you've been given or you've given to other people, and Deborah is going to take over now and talk about creating your own career plan. If you want to be head of Walmart, go for it. If you want to do something else or be a stay-at-home mom like my daughter's decided, go ahead and do it. And thanks so much for participating. This has been a great thing. I've learned so much today. Thank you.